It was curiosity that brought us to this place. Ford's Terror, so named after a Navy crewman who in 1899 paddled a skiff into this tricky inlet and spent 6 harrowing hours dodging blocks of ice to avoid being swept into a frightful maelstrom. The channel is narrow, with a sharp dogleg at its center. A magnificent waterfall marks the entrance. Transit through the inlet is recommended only at high water slack, of which more later. This tidal gate opens every 12 hours, so any boat wishing to enter or leave Ford's Terror safely must comply with nature's schedule. The tidal range in Endicott Arm, to which this inlet connects, routinely exceeds 20 feet. At slack water, the inlet is calm, but current flows in excess of 12 knots create turbulence and standing waves at all other times. It is nature's way of guarding the entrance to an enchanting place, which forms the focus of our story, a story with its own web of surprising revelations. Let me introduce you to this extraordinary hidden gem. It takes little imagination to turn the split and jagged rocks into menacing troll-like craggy faces, glaring down at you for invading their secret domain. Fleming 55, Mola Mola, joins us in the anchorage. At dawn, curtains of morning mist float across the jade-green water. After a brief interlude on this exquisite spot, the tides determine our time of departure. Once visited, Fort's terror continues to draw like a magnet. But nature always holds the key to the tidal gate. On our next visit, ice, carved from the Dawes Glacier at the head of Endicott Arm, filled the fjord. Judging the risks exceeded the benefits, we changed our plans. We might well be able to enter the gate, but unable to leave. It is not until 2023 that we are able to revisit Fort's terror. But on this occasion, we have a specific reason for our return. We have long wished to observe the rapids at its entrance, and our drone will make this possible. Slack water in the Narrows does not coincide with high or low tide. Instead, it occurs when the height of the water inside the inlet matches that of the water on the outside. The tidal range in Endicott Arm can reach 20 feet, but the narrow entrance restricts the rate at which water can enter the inlet. So water continues to rush in and out, even while the tide outside is still on the move. This continues until the levels are equal, at which time, and for just mere moments, the currents in the inlet will cease to flow, making it safe to navigate. We arrive at what we estimated to be full flood, but our timing is off, and we find it to be close to low water slack. High water slack is recommended for passage, but the chart shows sufficient depth at low water, so we decide to attempt entry, with Christine acting as bow lookout. She can see the bottom through the clear water, but we have adequate depth under the keel. Once inside, the scenery inspires awe. We head for the anchorage at the head of the bay, 4 miles from the entrance. The following morning, all is still. We take the tender to the mouth of the inlet. We go as close as we dare to the racing rapids. We seek out a refuge in which to anchor. Using chain and line, Christine makes us secure. But even here, we waltz to the rhythm of mischievous currents, with partners of floating kelp. Chris flies the drone, which soon disappears from sight. With footage saved on a minuscule SD card, we return to Venture. A barn swallow checks the cockpit. These birds are very tame. One even flies into the engine room, looking for somewhere to build a nest. But we have not yet finished flying our drone. Among the many wonders of Ford's Terror is one special waterfall that has long stayed lodged in my memory. It lies 1,000 feet up and could only be explored by using a drone. I know it'll be a high-risk flight from our untethered tender, but I asked Chris to give it a try. Far below, our tiny tender can just be seen, circled in red. Sadly, an equipment glitch condemns our brave little drone to a watery grave, but the stunning footage is saved. The following morning we arise at 4:30 to reach the inlet at high water slack.
We didn't come in 18, so 17 must have been the other year.
The entrance is full and flat calm, in total contrast to what we saw yesterday. It was only while editing the tidal footage that I realized we had only half the picture, and we needed footage of the incoming flow when the water outside the channel exceeded that on the inside. To complete the picture, we needed to return once again to bewitching Ford's Terror. I use this adjective because on every visit to this lovely spot, we have experienced something weird. An ephemeral technical issue, loss of a drone, and now, this year's surprise, an unwelcome visit by COVID-19. VHF radio and sat-nav do not connect, but amazingly, Starlink still works in the shadow of the towering cliffs, and we are able to contact the emergency medical facilities in Juneau and make an appointment. All we need to do now is to exit through the wicked entrance that gives Ford's Terror its sinister name. To meet the schedule, we need to pass through at low water slack, but it is spring tides, and the current is running fast by the time there is sufficient water in the channel. Blocks of ice remain stranded on the shallows. But we pass through safely into the sunshine on our way to Juneau. It is 60 nautical miles, and we make it just in time to the Juneau Urgent Care Facility, where they stay beyond closing time to check us all and write prescriptions for treatment. Harris Harbor finds a space for us, and it is here we press the pause button for our 5-day quarantine period before we are free to continue our journey north. 2 more years pass before we can revisit Ford's Terror. This time, Venture is anchored in the calm lagoon outside of the channel. We are now able to record the incoming tide, although not quite at full flood. Ford's Terror opens into Endicott Arm, but just around the corner lies the much-visited fjord of Tracy Arm. It is stunningly beautiful, with precipitous mountains plunging sheer into deep water. The fjord is a destination for many vessels of all sizes, including cruise ships and tourist boats from the town of Juneau. Venture has visited Tracy Arm on many occasions, the last being on June the 4th, 2025, when she was unable to get closer than 3 miles from the face of the glacier due to the amount of ice in the water from recent calving. Suddenly, at 5:30 on the morning of July the 10th, without warning, a massive side of the mountain, estimated at least 30 million cubic meters, broke loose and thundered into the fjord, creating a monster gravity wave at least 1,500 feet or 500 meters high. The glacier had retreated beyond the foot of the mountain and could no longer buttress its base. The star marks Sawyer Island, 3 miles from the glacier face. The tsunami created by the landslide scored it down to bedrock. The only possible anchorage in Tracy Arm lies at the entrance to the fjord, some 20 miles downstream from the glacier. So, due to the early hour, there was no loss of human life. If the event had happened just a few hours later, the result would have been catastrophic. 3 kayak guides had arrived at Harbor Island the night before, after paddling 75 days and 900 miles from Seattle. Being experienced, they had pitched their tents well above the high water mark, which probably saved their lives. But they lost most of their gear and 1 kayak, which was sucked into a whirlpool. The only other witness was the experienced captain of a small cruise vessel anchored in the same bay in which Venture had been anchored outside Fort Terror just 2 months earlier. There the tide had dropped rapidly and then surged 10 feet. She radioed her contacts at the U.S. Coast Guard and reported the phenomenon. This landslide is just the latest in a series of similar events that has affected the Pacific Northwest in recent years, and to which Venture has taken us in our thirst for adventure. The first was in Lituya Bay, which had occurred on the evening of July the 9th, 1958, precipitated without warning by a 7.8 earthquake along the Fairweather Fault. An 8.3 magnitude earthquake had broken loose 19 million tons of rock, creating a gravity wave which had reached the outstanding record height of 1,720 feet, 524 meters. The consequent tsunami stripped the shoreline to bare earth. The hazardous entrance is hard to spot, but we entered at high water slack. Once inside, we were mesmerized by its dramatic beauty. The scar from the huge rock fall which had created the wave is still clear to see, as is the tree line marking its height. For us, the beauty and peace of Lituya Bay was stunning, and we celebrated our arrival with a dram of Jura single malt whiskey. On October the 17th, 2015, a landslide in Tarn Fjord off Icy Bay released 180 million tons of rock with a 600-foot, 193-meter gravity or run-up wave at the terminus of Tyndall Glacier. Like Tracy Arm, the collapse was triggered by the retreat of the supporting glacier at its base. There were no witnesses to this event, which was only detected by remote automatic seismological techniques. Fortunately, all these events took place in remote areas. But in Prince William Sound, there is a similar situation where a retreating glacier could precipitate a truly massive collapse which could threaten an entire town. There will be more about retreating glaciers in future videos. Meanwhile, Venture continues to allow us to pursue our curiosity.